Hi, I'm attorney Gregory Dell, and I'm here with attorney Alex Palamara. And today we want to do an informational video on blood and vascular disorders and long-term disability insurance claims. Alex, as you know, we've helped hundreds of people with these types of disorders, and unfortunately, these are medical conditions that affect millions of people throughout the country. What's difficult about these conditions is that often they're commonly diagnosed, but they obviously don't immediately result in a disability. Kind of the argument from the disability companies that we often get where diagnosis doesn't equal disability. Also, Alex, you know that these conditions, these blood disorders, the vascular disorders that we're going to talk about in this video and give some tips about how people can prepare themselves for these claims, are often chronic medical conditions. So the first thing, Alex, I want to get into right away is when you have someone who's dealing with a chronic vascular disorder or a blood disorder and it's been going on for years, and then they reach the point of they're going to file a long-term disability claim, how do they prepare themselves to have the proper documentation to get their benefits approved?
I mean, that's the key, is the proper documentation. I mean, you can never win a disability insurance claim without proof, and proof is always in the form of medical records and medical documentation and diagnostics reports and whatnot. So you need to see your doctor. It's as simple as that. In order to prove your claim, you need to see your doctor so you have a paper trail of what your claim is, so you actually can prove to the insurance company why you have an inability to perform the duties of your own occupation or any occupation. So first and foremost, you got to have a paper trail. You got to start seeing your doctor. And hopefully you've been seeing your doctor for a long period of time, because like you're saying, a lot of these conditions are progressive. Maybe at first it's not disabling, but over a course of months or years, it might get to the point where you just can't hack it anymore doing your job, whatever your job may be. It might be a sedentary job, it might be a light duty job, heavy duty job. But at a certain point, you might say to yourself, I can no longer hack it anymore. I've been trying to be a superhero, fighting through it and working for the last year or two. At this point, I just can't do it anymore. And so you need to have a paper trail. You need to be treating with your doctors on an ongoing basis, so that when you're ready to make the claim and ready to stop being that superhero, you have proof in your back pocket and you say, insurance company, I'm filing a claim. Here's all the proof of my claim. I have a long history of treatment. And unfortunately, even with my treatment, maybe my conditions progressively got worse. I just can't hack it anymore, and you must approve my claim. So you need proof for your claim. It's key.
So, Alex, a lot of the conditions we're talking about are thrombosis, whether it's DVT, whether it's chronic venous insufficiency, whether we also get into a lot of people have peripheral artery disease, which affects almost 8.5 to 10 million people a year. And a lot of these conditions result in people having swelling, pain, and discomfort in their lower extremities often, especially when we're dealing with the peripheral arteries, which tend to go down towards the lower extremities, obviously. And the challenge we often face from the disability company is that they say, look, a lot of these conditions affect people when they're walking. And the job description of your client or of the claimant is a sedentary type occupation, which requires them to sit for, if they can sit for 6 hours a day, then they say they can do the job. However, we know that's not the case with these people who have this pain and discomfort. So how do you go about presenting this claim and saying, look, even though you say my client's claim is sedentary, they still can't do their job because of their particular vascular disorder?
Right. I mean, a lot of the times, you have to point to what their restrictions and limitations are, what the doctor recommends for them to do. I mean, a person's sitting in pain all day, whether you can sit there for 8 hours a day. But the problem is, if you're dealing with pain all day, it doesn't mean you actually can do your job. So just because you can sit in front of a computer or sit at your desk doesn't mean you're actually not disabled. The insurance companies love to say, if someone has a sedentary capacity, that means they can do their job or any job, and it's just ridiculous, because someone dealing with pain all day cannot do any job, or at least not very well. Furthermore, a lot of these conditions that you're describing, a lot of the times the doctors tell you that if you have pain or you have swelling, you have to put your legs up. So imagine sitting at your desk with your legs up. How the heck can you possibly type on a computer or do your job if you have your legs elevated all day or half the day or even an hour here or there? It's an impossibility. Or they tell you to get up and stand around and walk around, stretch your legs or get the blood flowing, whatever it is. And unfortunately, most jobs, you don't have the ability to do so. if your job let you do that, some people maybe have some flexibility, but for the most part, most employers are not that flexible. They're flexible to a degree, but at a certain point, as soon as your bottom line, as soon as your work product starts suffering, you might be let go, might be fired, or might be asked to come in and reduced hours, so your income's down. So you have to prove to the insurance company that your symptoms are real, and that what you need to remedy those symptoms prevent you from doing the duties of your own occupation, whatever those duties might be, whatever your own occupation might be. But you have to present to the insurance company there's a pain aspect and there's a symptom reduction aspect for a lot of these conditions.
And obviously with a lot of these vascular and blood disorders, there's a cognitive component to this as well, where you just mentioned, look, it doesn't matter if you can just sit in a chair for 6 hours. It's not about the physical ability to sit there. It's about what is going on in your mind and your ability to function. Are you fatigued? Are you having difficulty focusing? Are you having short-term memory issues? Are you having difficulty balancing multiple tasks? Because when someone's in pain or they have discomfort, they're not on their game per se. They're not able to focus and do what they need to do within their job. And also, Alex, most of our clients tell us, and we know from having consulted with tons of vascular treating physicians, that fatigue is a big issue as well. And how do you present fatigue when representing a claimant?
I mean, it's difficult. It really is, because the insurance companies want to discount fatigue. There's a lot of times, unfortunately, with pain and fatigue, there's no objective evidence to prove your level of pain. There's objective evidence to prove that you have a condition that might cause pain or fatigue, but there's no way to prove someone's actual level of pain or the amount of fatigue that they're experiencing. So it's a difficult aspect of our job. But of course, you go back to the medical records. You have to always be as clear as possible to your providers what you're suffering from, so they note it in your medical records, and there's a clear history of you complaining of such and such for such a long period of time. Maybe there could be also medication issues. A lot of medications that you take for these conditions can cause fatigue and whatnot, or like you said, focus issues, concentration issues. But it's literally telling your providers what you're suffering from, what you're feeling on a daily basis. It has to be noted in all your medical documentation. Then I point to, it's well known that some of these conditions cause pain and fatigue, so we tell the insurance company, my client's not a doctor, has no idea what the medical documentation says. Obviously, they're not making up their complaints, and look, it corresponds with what most people complain about when they're suffering from these various conditions.
Right, and it's also important to treat with the appropriate medical specialist. Obviously, with these conditions, you want to consult with a vascular doctor. You may want to treat with a hematologist. A lot of people have an internal medicine doctor or family medicine practitioner after they've already seen these specialists, but it's highly important to consult with the specialist and to get all of the diagnostic testing in addition to just the ordinary blood work that people often get. It's the DVT scans that are done commonly to see the status of what's going on with any potential clotting, and all the testing that's done for the deep vein thrombosis or the chronic venous insufficiency. And sometimes, yes, there's findings, and sometimes clots, they come and they go. And unfortunately, the disability carriers take advantage of that, and they say, well, you don't have a clot now. And that's unfair for the disability companies to take advantage, because of the fact that a person doesn't have a clot at the moment doesn't mean that their condition is resolved and they don't continue to have that same vascular disorder and those same symptoms. So we've always battled that particular position, Alex, where they try to argue, well, your recent scan was clear, so therefore you should be fine. And clearly that's not the case. Also, Alex, we know there's side effects of a lot of these medications. Obviously, one of the big ones being a Xarelto, that people take as a blood clotting medication. We've dealt with tons of clients that have had side effects of medications such as that cause them to have symptoms such as fatigue, difficulty, clarity with thinking, and causing further complications with their ability to do their job. And of course, Alex, we've had many clients that have had embolisms as a result of their thrombosis issues and artery issues, and then having to continue to try to work with that and the doctor's recommendations of kind of restricting their activities so that they could avoid a potential embolism from happening again, which is obviously a life-threatening condition that can affect a claimant. And then the last thing, Alex, is the secondary or the comorbid conditions that go along with these blood and vascular disorders, often being obesity and diabetes. How important is it for you to present these other comorbid conditions when presenting a claim?
I mean, you just have to, because I kind of use this analogy when I talk to some of my clients or potential clients, and I say sometimes A alone is not enough to prove to the insurance company that you're disabled. Sometimes B alone is not enough to prove that you're disabled. Sometimes C alone is not enough. But if you add A plus B plus C, it equals D for disability. So you have to present all the information in your medical records. Sometimes things might be embarrassing that you don't want to provide to them. You might think it's not relevant, but more often than not, it is relevant. And giving all the relevant documentation to them and giving them stuff regarding your diabetes, stuff regarding obesity, stuff regarding your DVTs or your history of DVTs or your artery disease or whatever it may be, it all could add up, and they have to take everything into account. And once their reviewing doctors see everything, they might say to themselves, you know what, this person can't do their job, can't do their light duty job, can't do their sedentary job, or whatever it may be, or the risk is too high on Xarelto. Maybe you work with your hands or you work with machinery. There's a risk that you can cut yourself and bleed out, or something dangerous can happen. So you have to provide all the information. You can't just pick and choose. And if you hire us, obviously we know what's not relevant. There's some medical documentation that's just not relevant. For the most part, maybe OBGYN stuff, not relevant in most scenarios or in some scenarios. So there's some doctors you just don't have to give the information or provide the medical records, or maybe the insurance company wouldn't even want those medical records. But for the most part, you have to give a global picture of you, because globally you can be disabled rather than just for a singular cause.
Right, and it's most important to keep up with the medical condition, because as we mentioned, almost everyone with these vascular diseases has had it chronically, and you know your diagnosis and you know your medications, and you try to limit your activities, and you've been doing it for years, but you obviously got to the point where you just can't take it anymore, and you can't manage your symptoms and continue to focus on work. And that's the big goal of what we're presenting to the disability company, is that your physical limitations, your cognitive symptoms, and limitations that you're having are preventing you from doing your job or any job. And that's what we present to the disability company and help you get to that point where you can get your benefits approved. So we encourage you to contact us for a free initial consultation. We will immediately review your disability policy. We will review your denial letter if you've been denied. We'll let you know immediately if we can help you. We represent clients all over the country. We encourage you to take a look through our website, search your disability company, search your medical condition, search your occupation on our website. You're going to find a lot of helpful information about cases that we've handled, lawsuits that we've summarized from around the country, reviews of your disability company, a lot of questions that we've answered from people that post on our website. And we want you to have all of this information because we want you to be educated about this disability claim process. The better you're educated, the better position you're going to be in to get your benefits approved, and that's extremely important. You have to know how to play this game, as they say, so that you can be in the best position possible to get your benefits. So we look forward to speaking with you in the future, and we'll be here when you need us. Thank you.